Hello, everybody. So my grandmother always used to say, there's a lid for every pot. And that's very exciting because that's what I believe. I believe that if you're meant to find someone, if you're meant to meet someone, you do. You don't have to go out and find them or look for them or any of that. You'll just meet together and come together when the time is right, when you're both ready, when you're both ready to come together, and it's divine timing. And I love that concept. And I know it sounds very Pollyannish, but that's okay, because if you follow me on my podcast, you know that I'm a Pollyanna, and I'm okay with that. But what about soulmates? Is it soulmates that come together, or twin flames that come together? What is the difference? And what happens when you do come together? So is it a higher level kind of relationship where you just bond and you go together and you learn together and you grow together? Or isn't it? My beautiful guest, Osa Sjoberg, has experienced this, and this is our topic for today. And I'm very excited to dive deep. Hello, Osa. How are you today?
Hello, I'm well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. And thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to chat about this because it's a very topical conversation. And I do a lot of coaching, and there's so many people out there just wanting to find the one or the special person or whatever it is. And I think a lot of us just go about it the wrong way. But before we go into that, let's share with our beautiful audience who this beautiful Osa is. Who are you, Osa?
Well, thank you very much. Well, who are we really here? To me, we are a soul in different human bodies, and I say that also with confidence because I have had a lot of past life experiences. So now I am a intuitive light working Heyoka empath. What I have done some of here is I'm an author, fitness lifestyle coaching, personal training, and I'm a soul coach and soul warrior, if you will. So just to leave a little bit there, I also have background in the acting community and modeling and so on. But yeah, this is a little bit about me. So.
Oh, I love it. I love synchronicities, and I love we're all on the same page. It's so beautiful. Well, thank you for that, also. I just want to go a bit now into soulmate. So tell me a bit about, I know because tell me a bit about twin flames. It's like quite a big topic right now. There's a lot of information out there, and who knows if it's right or wrong, or you don't know. So what are your thoughts about twin flames?
Well, I mean, I have also read a lot about it because of the experiences that I've had. And I think we need to sort of really feel and understand what resonates for us. Because again, it's not a one size fits for all. And because it is in the esoteric more, energetic, as opposed to something, specifically on paper, then we also have different experiences. But I can say from my own experience, and also what I have understood is the time we live in as well, that these last couple of years, and this year in particular, and around it, because what is time really? It's man-made, right?
Right.
That this is a very huge time, for lack of a better word, for twin souls, twin flames, whatever you want to call it. I'm not much for titles, but obviously we have to talk about things in a certain context. So what I have understood about twin flames is that we have one in because it's part of our own soul, that we come from past lives, if you will, in this physical plane, and we have contracts to fulfill. We have certain patterns, and we're here as twin souls it's one of the most powerful intimate relationship, if you will, because soulmates we can have. That can be a parent, it can be a sibling, it can be pets, it can be, and we have many of those.
Yes, yes.
And a twin soul, it's more, that's what I say, twin soul, twin flame, same thing. That we're coming from the same soul. And that's why it's such a powerful relationship, no matter what comes out of it in this particular life, if you meet. And some people won't, and in a particular lifetime. And then when you do, from what I understand and also my experience, it's extremely challenging as well. And it depends on where both people are sort of vibrating in the spiritual realm. So I guess that's the short version of my understanding, and also a little bit of my experiences. So
Yes.
yeah. And it's also this part of about how some writings might be saying, oh, if you meet your twin flame in this particular life, then you will be together in a union, in a relationship. Well, I don't necessarily think that that's true, because again, there are personal choices, right? Freedom of choice. And depending on what's going on with that, there might be people who pick a soulmate or pick somebody else, or you come back around much later, even though you have already met. Or maybe it's meant for another life and you're here to clear out certain things or enhance gifts from that.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So again, what I'm hearing, it's about divine timing almost. And I know I'm using that word loosely, okay, because it's a words. You have to use words to explain what you're trying to say.
Of course.
Okay, so it's about divine timing, but of course, again, it's about being resonating and having that energy at the same time. So
Right.
it does really matter, and of course, the choice always comes into it, and that's what makes life so beautiful. So on that note, tell me a bit about your experience.
Yeah, so why don't I start when I was I'm from Sweden originally, and I live in the US for over half my life in California. And I've had really deep experiences since I was just a few years old. Certain knowings, and and because I'm very intuitive, even an out-of-body experience at 4.5 years old, clear as day today. And even though at 4.5, I didn't know what intuition was by way of being 4.5 years old, right? But something told me that it's not time to say anything about this. So I kept it to myself.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful. It wasn't even jarring to me. I was observing me and my mother. I mean, not to get into the details. So I've had a lot of those things happening. And then when I was just 10, 11, 12, early teenage years, I had visions and deep feelings of, it was me as an adult. And almost like movie clips, it's hard to describe, these experiences that we have sometimes.
Yes.
But and I didn't know at the time that it was probably a premonition for something to come later in this life. And but it was really deeply felt, and things that, again, at that age, I don't know where that would come from, really. And so then you go about your life, and you live life, and things happen, and you grow up in certain ways, and all that. And then to fast forward a bit, about it was around 2010, somewhere around there. I got together with a small group of women who are clairvoyant, if you will, and they work together. They have a lot of visions that they feed off of each other.
Yes.
And they knew that I had gifts, one of them that I knew, and she invited me to this group. So we got together. It was very like a picnic kind of thing.
Nice.
And they said they started seeing a lot of things. I've always been told by people that I can just meet wherever, like, oh, your energy is very strong, and ooh, you there's a lot going on there. And so about this one, there were other things too, but about this one particular thing, they were describing, one of them started saying, there's a man coming into your life of great significance. And they described him physically.
Wow.
And part of it was, and I'm like, you're kind of being light about it too. And
Yes, it's like a party game, right?
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, I like all of that, but not the long hair. Because they even said about the long hair. And I've never been a big fan of that overall, on men. So it was just a joke. But
yes.
But yet it hit something in me, from years past. But yet I'm just like, okay, well, we shall see. And then about a decade later, I met somebody at a gathering. We had mutual friends, and there was such a recognition. We basically we could finish each other's sentences almost, and he just knew where I was from in Sweden without, like, and I'm from a small town in the northern part of Sweden, so it's not like, oh, Stockholm,
Yes.
And then I could say certain things, and I'm big on eyes and what comes out of
yes,
eyes.
yes.
So there was just something there, but yet nothing specific still to put a finger on. And then we got to know each other a little bit, and I'm just like, wow. I started picking up on, which I do as an empath, with also in the collective, but specific things. And I started, and it was jarring because it familiar yet jarring because of certain things that happened and what was going on with him. And I could just tell sometimes what had happened from afar, and then he later confirmed.
Yes.
So that's a little bit of how things came, and I just it was kind of funny because I think the second time we actually got together, he said something about, and he doesn't even. He didn't know what a twin flame or twin soul is, and at that point I wasn't thinking anything like that either. But we were driving, and he said, because of how we were talking and flowing into certain things, that maybe we're soulmates, and I'm like, oh, maybe that's a line. But I said, who knows? Maybe we're twin souls. It just came out of me from somewhere. And he's like, oh, what is that? And I explained it a little bit. And then, yeah, it's been extremely intense, to say the least.
Okay, and so I have to go there because, again, with I'm talking popular media and everything. For me, the Pollyanna believes, okay, that you meet and somehow, but you have to be, of course, we have to go back. You have to be on the same vibration, right? And you just grow together, right? You grow together and you work together and you just grow the relationship like that.
Right.
However, hearing and reading certain things, a lot of people say that this is the most contentious relationship ever. So I'm going to ask you, what are your experiences?
Well, there's a lot of things that I also don't want to speak on.
Yes, yes. Generally. No, I don't mean specifics. No, generally.
Right. Well, it's the what was mentioned before is that it can be one of the most challenging that you come across, because there's a mirroring and there are triggers, activations on things that need to be healed, transformed, transmuted, and all that. So it can be extremely jarring when some people have traumas that are very much alive.
Yes.
And then, like, say in my case, with all these things, like, I could see through so many things that how do I explain? Well, I just, there were just certain things that I could just read without, there's no explanation really. You there's just a knowing.
Yes, yes.
And so I am. It's because I have to be also a little careful here with, well, I'm not here to throw out details, like I said,
No,
about people,
not at all.
but it's yeah, for to kind of go back a little bit to this whole thing about what you started by saying, that if we're meant to meet somebody and they're meant to be in our lives, but then again, what does that mean? Because again, it could be for lessons and certain karmas and contracts to be wrapped up, to be,
Yes.
So I don't have the thought, and I also have a very good friend who's an intuitive who has gone through a twin soul earlier in her life. And she ended up with her soulmate instead when it comes to, she's married and so on. And it was, and she said, but the bond, the soul bond, can never be broken.
Yes.
And that's something that I would agree with, no matter what happens. But that doesn't mean that you're going to be, that this is the only person that you can be with here in a intimate romantic relationship.
Yes.
Husband, wife, whatever the story is on that. So it's still a work in progress. I think it is for everybody. But it can, I think when both people really vibrate, again, they kind of push each other.
Yes.
Also,
yes.
by being, and not even being together, not
Yes.
even being around each other, there's an energetic thing that's and that's actually known in a twin soul relationship, if you will, connection, that there's separation, runner, chaser, these kind of words that are descriptions, right? And I think a lot of the work is in when you're also not around each other.
Yes.
But
and I love that, because it's somehow, even though you don't know the person, you've only met the person, or you know the person you feel that you know the soul somehow.
Right.
You know the soul, you know the heart, you know that person.
Yes.
And it's such a powerful thing, but yet on the other hand, it messes with you, because on one level you have this connection almost on a spiritual level,
right?
And on a physical level, you're not even, like, you barely speak to each other or whatever it is,
right?
So it really messes with you. So it's a very powerful kind of connection where, like, how do you deal with it? How do you deal with that constant conflict there? Because that constant, like, oh, I have to cut these ties now so that I can live my life. Yet I can't, because I've got this constant like spiritual connection where
Right.
you know when that person is not okay. You know when that person is good. You know when that person is,
Yes.
and you don't want to like call them every 2 minutes, because the 3D, like the physical world, is totally different. So
Yes.
how did you deal with that?
Well, it's for me that when it comes to to conflict and rough things that surface and come in, depending on what's going on and where people are at. It is, like you said, it is a very difficult things, because we feel it so deeply, yet we must also sort of stick with what's showing up in the here and now, and
Yes.
even though there can be knowings and this soul. I mean, I had I shared this part. I was at a guided meditation, and I had extraordinary. I've been on that before, and I've also binaural guided meditations, and I've had amazing experiences in that, where I observe myself being in a situation while I'm experiencing it. And that has also happened naturally and organically without that. But this particular one, which is a little bit more than 2 years ago, it was beginning of September of 2020. One of the things that came up there was a flashback from, it seemed like it was medieval times. And it was, there were dwellings around, but a kind of a big open field, and I was doing something, and then I just sensed, and I'm off to the side observing this as I'm experiencing it. It's very intense but beautiful. I had tears coming down my eyes for different reasons. And I had a feeling that, oh, he's here. And I turn around, and there he was walking toward me, and the feeling was as if he found me, or he was coming home after some battle or hunting, or things like that. And we just looked at each other, and we just knew, and there was a big smile and just this overwhelming amount of joy. And I just ran up to him, and we embraced, and then whew, I was away from that vision. But it was so, the short amount of time that it was, time in human time, it was so powerful and also so confirming. And then my tears were both of that joy and beauty that I have felt and known and experienced, and at the same time sadness of things in the current moment. So if that can help a little bit with that, but back to the question also, how do you deal with it? Well, there's always lessons, if you will, right, with all of this. And what we need to step into are confirmations, flat out confirmations of things we already know. But then how do you handle it when you're not just in the soul plane, you're here in the 3D physical life?
Yes.
Well, we need to go with our heart. I always go to the heart, because we do tend to overthink a lot, right?
Yeah.
And also step away and set boundaries because it all comes down to self-love.
Yes.
And it's all connected, because and that's a subject in itself, yet it holds together with all of this, because if one or two people don't have enough self-love, that is usually not a healthy thing.
Yes.
So it's all about the inner work. And again, depending on where we are there. And so it's that balance of knowing the soul and knowing, just have that very strong connection, and yet accept what is here in the now, let go, and simply understand that if it's truly meant to come together further than what is or what's been, then to have faith that then that's going to happen. Yes. Without struggle, without
pushing or pulling.
Forcing. Yes. Yes. So it is about coming back to that present moment and the self-love. And the more one person, in this case of two people, right? The more that one person embraces the self-love and self-respect and self-worth, what have you, what all of that entailing, what you want to call it, then we need to trust that the other person is also doing that, whether around each other or not, and for their highest good. Yes. To always go to one's highest good and for the highest good of all. So that's how I...
Yes, I love that. And when you were talking about that story, for me was so beautiful. It gave me goosebumps, you know.
Yes. Yeah, me too.
Because I've also experienced past lives like that as well. But of course, you never talk about it because it's almost taboo, right? So we're talking about it here now because this is break fear, find freedom. So we're breaking boundaries. That's what breaking fear is.
Yes.
And I'd like to also say that I agree with you, because you have to start with yourself. And because mirrors are insane with this, you know, like every time you meet or you speak to each other, it's like, whoa, you know, where do they come from? Because it's that mirror, and it's really like he's your mirror.
Right.
Which is beautiful. And yes, you have to like go inside and do the work.
Yes.
But I think it does start with you.
Yes.
Of course it starts with you. So you have to have that self-love, because you want to come together as two whole people, not as half people coming together as one. It's not a codependent relationship.
And I think that's always the case for any relationship,
yes, of course.
No matter what the basis is, but absolutely.
Yes, that's the basis of it. So if you don't love yourself, or you don't respect yourself, or you don't honor yourself, or you don't, and it's interesting how the universe reflects that back to you. So if you don't love yourself, you'll have those kind of people coming into your life that just trigger you. And instead of going like, that terrible person, you should look at it and say, oh, so that's what it is. Oh, that's what I need to look within myself. So it is really beautiful. And
if I may add something to that.
Yes, sure. Of course.
So that's also something that's talked about a lot. Well, if you get this attracted to you, that means that this is, you know, who you are, or what's it. Ultimately we are all connected at the end of the day, right?
Yes,
and also with nature and all of this, which is something that goes together with, I mean, we live on this planet as human beings, but we are souls.
Yes.
And so what I would like to add to that also is that, like for me, for example, I have throughout my life attracted quite a bit of wounded people from childhood and on. And I am an empath, a very sensitive empath, and extremely nurturing. And so I have that. I have many people entrusting me with their life, basically, in a sense that I know things about people that nobody else does. And I take that extremely seriously and to heart. So it's when I look at those things, sometimes, you know, it's like, well, that was you need to work on that, or you need to recognize that, right, when it's being mirrored. But then there's also that part of, it's not always that, I believe. It's also about those lessons of, like in the case of empaths, right? Well, many empaths, and in my case, we also have to understand that we cannot save people.
That's the biggest thing. That's the
Right.
biggest thing. Yes, yes.
So
Or rescue them.
Right, exactly. So we can be who we are and be there and be of support, of love, of encouragements, and all of that, but not at the expense of ourselves. So that comes back to what we were talking about before, right? So, you know, I already had that in my field, in my being, that, and what I have talked about to many people, that we cannot save anybody. And I think is it Confucius who said, you know, we cannot. How does that go? It fell out of me, but it's just in other words of what I'm saying, that we also cannot save anybody who doesn't want to save themselves. Also, if we look at it that way, so there has to be. Oh, this part. There's another thing. Confucius, I believe this is when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Yes. Right. Yes. Yes.
So if there are things that we're trying to convey to somebody and we really see deeply, if they're not ready,
they won't hear it. They won't hear
it. They can't. They need to. They need to get to things on our own timeline, divine timing, and so that's also a part that it's not. I don't think it's always like, oh, but this is, this is for you. Well, what about the other person? I mean, I'm say we're here to offering something of high vibration, and we get met with the opposite, let's just say, for lack of a better word, with maybe venom or something, then what is really here's another thing then. If you offer somebody a gift and they don't receive it, who does the gift belong to?
Yes. Yes. And some people can't receive gifts. And then, so good question, but I just want to go back a moment and just, I think it's a lot about, so people, we mirror, and I mean, not everyone mirrors us, like, so I'm sorry if I've made, and we don't mirror anybody, but I think it's about triggers almost. So if someone comes and they say something to you and it like jars you, and then I think that's something you should look at.
Yes.
But a lot of times people can't receive gifts anyway. Yeah. And then again, it's about us being able to receive that gift, because us as empaths, right, we always have to give and give and give and give and give and give and give. And sometimes, like I say that often to and it's many times it's, well, the woman mostly, but I mean, I can't say that, because that's not fair, because there's a lot of, so let's not go down that road. But a lot of times I'll say, but how do you love receiving gifts, right? You love receiving gifts, right? I mean, you love giving gifts, right? So you have to allow that other person to give you that gift.
Right.
And again, it goes back to that self-love, because once you realize that you are, like a beautiful human being, once you realize that, and you can love yourself enough to realize that, and I mean love as in love, not as in selfish love. Okay, that's another podcast for another day. But when you can love yourself, you can realize that it's okay to receive. Right. And that's when you get to that point, it's already huge. And I think at that point, then you also started, there's different kind of people that come into your life.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. And it's, it again, the circle of life, and living in symbiosis,
yes.
And receiving and giving. Yeah, and then, when you are, a lot of people are huge givers, right? They give a lot of themselves, and we're not talking about stuff here now, right? Material
Not
things.
stuff at all.
We're talking about giving of ourselves.
Yes.
And then, sometimes that can also be taken for granted, right? Because they are this person. And yes, that ought to always be there, but yet this is also where it comes in to set the boundaries, because there needs to be a reciprocation. And it's not, I do this so that I can get this back, but that's just how it works naturally. And what you were saying, that some people cannot receive because they still have quite a bit of work within themselves to do in order to do so. So there's also sabotage, self-sabotage.
Oh, yes. Huge. Yes.
And that's something that, I mean, probably most of us has done to some degree, one way or another, and not relationally necessarily, but in any way aspect. But if somebody can get to recognize that, wow, I'm pushing good things away, I'm pushing good people away.
Yeah.
Until you then start really healing that part, because that's usually come from not being worthy, right? Even though maybe it's not so apparent.
Yes.
But it's there somewhere because of past experiences. So again, yes, the mirrors are all over, and yet it's also there are. I mean, we have quite a bit of people that we meet that we have also had past lives with to some degree or another. It's not just one person, just to clarify that, right?
Yes, of course, yes.
But then there are some that holds a bigger impact, if you will, and this whole thing about people come into our lives for a reason, a season, or a lifetime.
Yeah.
And there's less of the people of a lifetime than people coming in for seasons or reasons, right? So,
yes.
But with these deep soul connections, it's really about honing in on that soul that really lives within this physical body, and to break away from the patterns and ancestral wounds. Perhaps it might not even be connected directly to each other. When we now talk about the twin soul connection, some things are not even connected directly to each other at all.
Yes.
But it's ancestral things that need to be transformed and healed and so on. So because some people are saying that, well, twin souls, they usually have they usually come from similar backgrounds and come from, no, I don't.
I don't agree with that.
No, not at all. Not at all. And there can actually be a lot of contrasts and differences, and but yet there are things that are kind of not explainable, right? Because it's so deeply felt and experienced that unless you have.
And it's that overwhelming love almost that you can't explain, and you haven't felt it anywhere else.
Right. And even and it's not logical.
No, not at all. Never.
Yeah, not at all. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And
because then you also start questioning yourself as well.
Right.
Your brain starts saying, like, what is going on here? So no matter what, there's always that, like, your heart just like goes.
Yes. And it is about, no matter what happens in the physical reality, 3D reality.
Yeah.
There is that. Well, I mean, in my case, I'm gonna talk from my experience, that there's this unconditional love.
Yes.
For the soul, not necessarily for things in the present or in the recent past or whatever, behaviors or but there's an unconditional love for that soul, because it is a part of your own, and it's definitely, it's a very joy, when I, because I have been this, have had these visions, since I was a young child. Then when you actually get to experience things and you put it all together, the puzzle pieces one by one, like, oh my gosh, this was actually this was this, because we experience a lot of things. Like we have different loves in our lives, and we meet so many people in our lives that hold the impacts in different ways. And most of us go through different relationships, right? If we talk about, intimate relationships or romantic relationships. And I have said, since I was very young, I have said I must have been a Romeo and Juliet in a past life because of that. And not that I glorify the ending of that story by any means, but it's that deep thing, that deep bond, that it's there. And also for a lot of people, what I understand also, they feel it and sense it, but they haven't met the person. They don't have a person of object for this, but you feel it. And again, for me, it was, back when I was a kid, even though I didn't know that that's what it was specifically, I just knew there was something deep. And so for some people here and now, or people out there feeling these things, these deep about somebody, but they haven't met them in real life here and now.
So did you ever feel that, like, suddenly you have this like intense longing and missing of that person?
Yes, absolutely.
Just out of the blue.
Yes, and even though there's a just nope, not going there, not this is it, or whatever. I have picked up on so much, and I could give so many examples, but of course I'm also not wanting to give up because I'm a private person, and also for them.
Yes, of course.
But I could give an endless amount of references of what I had picked up on. And one, I actually talked about it in a video already on my YouTube channel, which is, I'm gonna rev up, and I switched the name to it. It's been dormant, but it's called Rise of the Empathic Phoenix. And I mentioned how I had a day where I was just grooving, and my mood was really high, and I was in high spirits, if you will. And I was looking forward to the night. It was actually a New Year's Eve, and a few years ago, and I was on top, energetically, right? And then I pull in the car in my parking spot at home, and all of a sudden I had like an energetic punch in my gut, if you will, but it's like energetically I just, and now I have goosebumps again talking about it.
I also have goosebumps.
And I just, it almost took the breath out of me. And I just, and having had these experiences before in ways, I'm just okay. Take a moment, breathe through it. What is this? Where is this coming from? And, because sometimes we have to examine it a little bit. Is this mine? Is it not? And usually with those things, and especially when you're in that mood, it's not yours.
It's yours, yeah.
So I have a collective story about that too, before the Paris attack happened. actually I picked up on that. But to come back to this, after about a minute or so, maybe less, I'm just, oh no, I knew something had happened that was not positive with him. And I also knew what was going on that day. So I just, I felt it so deeply that it took my, I had to work on it to do my best not to be affected by it for myself so much. And that's a lot of work for an empath constantly. But then about an hour and a half later, it was confirmed in a text message.
Wow.
Yes. So yes, and then there have been many other incidents when there hasn't even been any communication at all for a good while, and I had known that I had to reach out because something is going on, and in fact that's been the case. But then, again, you sometimes you need to just really keep on working on accepting that this is the connection, and if it's not for the highest good for both people in the moment, again, we cannot save anybody. So it's definitely it's very intense. It's extremely intense. And it's we can go about our daily lives because that's what we do, right? We do things here. But lately, of course, in the world in which we live now and what's happened and worldwide, we've had to go more inward. I mean, I always have. I have never been somebody who doesn't do that. And in fact, sometimes it feels like too much because of the experiences that I have.
Yes, yes.
But, and I don't know if I can, would you like me to sort of mention this part that holds a big thread in this life of mine too, because of probably what we're going to talk about the next time around, which has to do with this, and also another past life part where collectively what we are going through and have been going through in humanity, and also for me personally, I had a very specific thing that landed me in the ER when I was, this is years ago, and I figured out what it was, because it was not what was said in the physical by the medical doctors and so on. And I knew intuitively some moments after they told me I was in really bad shape and almost couldn't breathe and walk. And I'm health itself. Like I really did, looking at all the blood work and, and very athletic, and I've always been an athlete my whole life, and again living the healthy lifestyle. They couldn't figure it out, and then a verdict came in based on something, and at first it was very jarring, but then after I took some breaths and I'm like, no, this is not it. And later on, in fact, it was confirmed, just to be brief about it. But what actually...
I'm going to stop you there, Osa, because this is a perfect time to stop, because we are going to have our next podcast, which will be straight after. So let's leave that at that point, and we'll pick it up at the next one, because that's just a good place to stop, right?
Right.
Tell us, Osa.
It's flying in, yet it's different from what we really were talking about, but yet it's also tying in. So, and we'll talk more about that.
It always does. Okay, there's synchronicities all the time. That's the beautiful thing.
Right.
Tell us, Osa, where can people find you?
Well, so I did mention the YouTube channel, which I actually shifted the name almost 2 years ago, and it's meant to be in this. I have gone through quite a bit, and I guess setting it up for the next podcast, something that I basically shouldn't be around here, sitting here like I do for. So it was going to be about, or it's going to be about all that, and going into all these things in more in details and sharing more. So Rise of the Empathic Phoenix, that's the YouTube channel, but it has laid dormant for a bit because of what I have gone through and so on. So I'm itching. I've been itching for a long time to do it, and maybe now when you and I have talked about this and things are shifting a bit, this is the time, right? So I will be more active there. Instagram, it's my name, Osa Sjoberg. And I have also taken down some things because unfortunately there's also scamming and all these things going on, unfortunately, at the same time. But Osa Sjoberg is the Instagram handle. And I also have a couple of newer Facebook pages, which is Conscious Fitness by Osa and Mountain Wise Woman, Mountain-Wise Woman. So, and then as far as other things go, that will come as it goes. But those are my platforms where I am now.
Well, thank you, Osa. And of course, all the details will be in the description box. So just go out and check out Osa. This has been beautiful. Thank you so much. I can't wait for our next installment of this, because it's just something that's so close to my heart. And it's always so exciting to speak to someone that when you speak in the same language and you're okay with it, because it's something that because of society, because of my own fears, it's always been like, something I've kept to myself and haven't really shared.
Right.
So this, and as I said, this is the platform. We break fears here, and we break through things. So we find our freedom. So we'll talk about freedom in the next one, and we'll talk about all the other exciting tidbits that I'm really excited and can't wait to speak about. Thank you so much, Osa. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really a lovely connection, and I'm honored to be here.
Thank you. I've been honored and privileged to have you on the show. And with that, everybody, we will see you next week, and have an awesome one. And remember, be kind. Thanks, everyone. Bye.